So what kind of philosophies and principles do you implement with now the program that you're in?
Yeah, so we've just kind of had not so much a restructure or reshape of this, but more of an emphasis on the physical development of players. But that's what we'll say. We're still in the place now where it's almost like rugby and S&C are like colliding. So, for example, we've got a kind of scenario where rugby are saying, like, look, we need these guys more physically developed by the time they get to under 20s level, because at under 20s level, we struggle to compete with bigger nations, which is fair. But then we've also got scenarios where we've got under 16s playing like 2 games a week. And it's like, well, if they're playing 2 games a week, when are they going to train? Like, if you want them to be better at this point, like, we understand they need to play rugby, and that's an important part. But there also needs to be a physical development part as well. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, we've had like a kind of structure, like I say, towards having like the under 20s and what's called the Pro Academy. So they're aligned to the 2 professional teams in Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh. So kind of those in the under 20s sit at the same level, and then we're all about at our level now in the academies is preparing the guys to take that step up. So certainly under 18s is when it becomes like a performance focus. Bearing in mind, like, some of these guys' training ages will be maybe 3 years, so it's nothing fancy. It is just still implementing the basics. And then with like our under 16s program, again, you'll have seen similar ones when you were helping interns. It's literally teaching them the fundamentals, so that by the time they hit that under 17s year, they're ready to train. So ideally, we would like to be able to start working with kids a little bit earlier, so that even at that under 16s age, we can start to, again, not so much training for performance, like with a real emphasis on load, because movement always has to come first. There's plenty of coaches, clubs, schools who will show you what they can do by loading up 14-year-olds. And I had one coach come in and speak to me, and he was asking me for some guidance on his program. I was like, yeah, cool. And then he was like, oh, so this is all their 1 rep maxes. And I was like, right, okay. What age is this again? He's like, yeah, it's under 15s. I was like, yeah, okay. Here's maybe the first thing we've done is we probably don't need to be doing 1 rep maxes with under 15s. Yeah, you're always going to run into that, where you just really want those guys at that time to be putting that movement first foundation in, and then we can start to layer stuff on top. And obviously, this is speaking about gym work, but it's also the on the pitch stuff. So as in looking at our speed and our plyometrics, it's just having some kind of exposure to that, just some kind of base layer, so that we can just keep layering on and on and on. And then by the time that they get into an under 20s environment, like they've got a training age of like 4 or 5 years, they're starting, like, should be fairly strong by this point, should be movement competent, then they can start to look at the fancy stuff.
Yeah, so what's your movement competency tests like, and how do you develop them from there?
So again, it's all just kind of, so the fundamental movements we use, which aren't any secret to any sport, are our push-pull, hinge, squat, and then we've got brace and rotate. Those are the kind of ones that as an SRU, like as a kind of curriculum we use, is like, we want to get guys to this point. So at like this time, the under 16s, by the time they've finished that under 16s year, we want them to be fully competent in all these, so that we can start to load those up come that kind of under 17s year. In terms of like movement assessments, we don't use an FMS or anything. It's very much so the way that the academies are set up is you've got 4 regions with different coaches in each one. So we're all kind of working towards the same thing, but every environment's different, so everyone needs to kind of go through their same stuff. So we've just got like an in-house, like a red, amber, green of like basic movements, so bodyweight squat, goblet squat, zombie squat, or hands-free front squat, both the same thing. Into your overhead squat, things like that. Just basically try to tick as many boxes as we can, so that we're like, yeah, like this kid's a good mover. He can move across all planes, all different movements, unilaterally, bilaterally. Like, he's ready to go and start to train properly.
This is something that I've been sort of interested in, and it's Rob Anderson's got this like, perfect model of how he coaches under all ages. How much of that do you use implement into your training? Because I know he was there beforehand, and
Yeah,
he
he
sort of
was. Yeah, yeah. No, so like Rob is class. Like he's taught me so much about just kind of that youth development space. So I'm constantly pestering him now that I'm doing the national under 16 stuff with that growth and maturation because he's like, I would see him as an expert of that. I don't know if he would agree, but like I think
100%,
like I think he's
100%.
really good. Especially he's not like just the science guy. Like he's got the practice as well. So yeah, like we've used some of that stuff. So I know he used to use like the Dan Baker kind of model around body weight testing. So basically, once you've scored a certain amount of points, that's when you're saying like, yeah, this kid's strong enough to move on to do like proper kind of strength training. I would imagine that he's kind of refined that to his own scenario now. I need to catch up with Rob. Actually, I've got that on my list of things to do this week is to try and catch up with him because I want to go and pick his brains and steal some of his ideas. Is the other part. So like under 16s. So as much as that's super important because those are the guys coming through in 4 or 5 years' time to hopefully play like under 20s and then longer than that into the national team. But our main focus as an academy is academy supported players. So each region's got 35, and they'll all tend to fall in the under 18, under 17 bracket. So the way that that's again something I'm working towards just now is almost just like my mind works in flow charts and like simple progressions. So it's like, right, I want to know that once this guy's at this point, they then move into this, and then once they've done that, this is the passing criteria. Then they move into this. So that's currently kind of what I'm working through just now. So maybe if we catch up in a few months' time, I
I would
can then
love to.
this is what I want to see, and this is what like the progression I want to see the guys follow on. Because just now it's sort of still just piecing bits together.
So how do you then interact with sort of the coaches at that level, and how does the S&C tie into that?
So yeah, we've got a pretty good relationship with them. To be fair, like they trust us to do our job. They'll tell us things we're noticing. Tends to be the same things that we're noticing. In terms of like strength movements or like this guy like really struggles with like he's not powerful off one leg. It's like yeah, fine, we've noticed that as well. There's been some. You always get some different perspectives and ways you don't think of things. Like I know we spoke about one player, and I was said to the rugby like, look, what do you see as his limiting factor? And he was like, it's his ability to change height. I was like, what? Like, that's kind of around like a quite strange thing to say. I thought like I couldn't really understand what he meant, but he just sort of spoke about as the player was running when he had to dip height to make a tackle, like he really struggles with that. I was like, right, okay, fair enough. So we kind of just went round a way of sort of one. I think it was more kind of like a sport specific thing in terms of like a reaction to a stimulus, like he's maybe not understanding well enough what he's looking at to know to change direction at like earlier or at the right time, and then looked at like our kind of single leg stuff and to make sure that he's got the movement qualities that he's able to change direction, which he did. But it's just also making sure he's strong and comfortable in those positions and and playing around with like foot placement so that he has to experience producing force in a variety of different positions. So you sometimes get cool kind of interactions with that, like ways you don't think. In terms of the growth and maturation stuff, like the coaches that we're working with currently are pretty good. But it's like the coaches underneath that are working in the club game. Those are the ones that we can maybe get those get a little bit more work done with. That's something I'd like to see kind of progressing forward.